they think he should still jump into the race, Anderson.
Randy Kay, appreciate it. Let's get perspective now from Democratic strategist Paul Begala, also CNN political commentator Scott Jennings, former special assistant to President George W. Bush. Paul, I just want to play what former Vice President Pence said today again to listen for the viewers.
January 6th was a dark day in the history of the United States Capitol. Lives were lost, and many were injured. But thanks to the courageous action of the Capitol Police and federal law enforcement, the violence was quelled, the Capitol was secured, and we reconvened the Congress that very same day to finish our work under the Constitution of the United States and the laws of this country.
What do you make, Paul, of what Pence said and the response?
Well, it's the Federalist Society claims to be committed to, these are their words, I looked up their website, the principles of limited government embodied in our Constitution. Well, the Constitution is absolutely clear. The woman Randy interviewed was clearly right. The Vice President is only ministerial. He just has a ceremonial job at the counting of the electoral votes. It's not in question. It's as if Neil deGrasse Tyson were speaking to a group of astrophysicists, and he said, you know, Donald Trump is wrong. The moon is not made of green cheese. It's made of rock. And they went, yeah, I'm not sure. You know, it's preposterous and it's insulting. I'm glad Randy found some principled constitutionalists there. They claim to all be. But I was really disappointed, frankly, that they didn't carry him around on their shoulders for saving the Constitution, because that's what that whole group claims to be about. And I'm beginning to wonder if they really are.
Scott, do you think the former vice president made the right call, publicly rebuking the former president, or at least just saying he was wrong? Did he have a choice?
I do, actually. Yeah, I think he made first of all, his speech was terrific today. His words were terrific. His actions on January the 6th were right on and in accordance with the Constitution and the laws of America and what happened on Election Day. So he's played this correctly, I think, all the way through. As a political matter, this is the campaign Mike Pence is going to have to run. He's obviously running. Donald Trump, I think, is obviously running. And Mike Pence and Donald Trump are going to have a great debate about whether the Republican Party is going to see it the way Donald Trump did or the way Mike Pence did. And so I would look at this speech today, frankly, as something of a kickoff of that debate. I assume Trump will have something to say when he finally hears the Pence clip. But this is what he and I assume Governor Chris Christie, who looks like he's running as well, are going to argue. And it's essentially this. I stood by Donald Trump every step of the way, but come January 6th, we had to part ways because the Constitution mandated it. And that's where we are as a party. So I thought Pence was great today, and I'm glad he gave the speech that he did.
Paul, I mean, we've seen this back and forth between Trump and Pence this week. The ball, I guess, is now in Trump's court, if you want to use that analogy. Does Pence, I mean, in this Republican Party, do you think Pence has a shot?
Well, look, I defer to Scott. He knows his party far better than I do. But I would note that a year ago, 3 or 4 weeks after the insurrection, Mike Pence, who I don't agree with politically, but I know him. I've known him a long time. He has profound and deep and abiding Christian faith. And he went to a Christian conservative group called the Faith and Freedom Coalition, and he was booed. And one guy yelled out, "Traitor!" Now, if the Christians prefer Donald Trump, who can't name a single book in the Bible, to Mike Pence, I think that tells you something. If the constitutionalists are at best very lukewarm and kind of silent in support of the guy who help save the Constitution, and instead for the insurrectionists. In other words, I think it looks like a rout. I think the people who should be most committed to Mike Pence seem to not be backing him at all. I think Trump has so perverted and polluted the Republican Party that it may be beyond salvation.
Scott, I'm wondering what you made of the official RNC resolution censuring Adam Kinzinger, Congressman Kinzinger and Congresswoman Cheney, and the talk of legitimate political discourse that claiming that the January 6th committee is going after ordinary Americans who were just engaged in legitimate political discourse.
Well, here we are sitting in the greatest political environment of my, adulthood for Republicans in terms of trying to take back the House and the Senate in November, and really, I think, heading towards 2024. And we have all these issues and all these amazing things to talk about. And here at the RNC, which I've been a delegate to the last several conventions, I'm a proud Republican and will be voting Republican, I'm sure, in the future and have in my life. Here we are today changing the conversation. Let's relitigate January 6th. Let's tell people they didn't see what they really saw on TV. Let's relitigate the November 2020 election. This is a recipe for failure. We have all of this amazing environment, all of these issues, all of this forward-looking that we could be doing. By the way, this is a party that could not be bothered to write a platform in 2020. And now we've spent more time writing this resolution than we spent on writing a policy platform in the last presidential election. It is not legitimate political discourse.
Scott, when you say it like that, it sounds ridiculous.
Crash into the Capitol. It sounds ridiculous because it is ridiculous. You cannot crash the Capitol, defile the House and the Senate, and attack the police. That's not legitimate. Now, I know Chairwoman McDaniel put out a statement later saying there's a difference between the people who were protesting versus the rioters at the Capitol. That's not what the resolution says, and if that's what they meant, that's what they should have put in there. So this is an unforced error that hurts the Republican Party in its attempt to get back into power, and it's deeply, deeply disappointing that it happened today. This phrase, legitimate political discourse, will be hung around every candidate's neck for the next 2 cycles.
Well, Paul, I mean, to Scott's point, it's also, the idea, Ronald McDaniel came out and said, well, no, we're not talking about those who attack the Capitol. The January 6th committee is interested in the attack on the Capitol. And so when they come out with this statement saying that the committee is going after ordinary Americans who are just, having a legitimate political discourse, that is who they're talking about, the people attacking the Capitol.
Right. And Chairwoman McDaniel called it an insurrection on the day or the day after the insurrection. She knows better. Ronna Romney McDaniel used to be a real Republican. And just like some of those people at Faith and Freedom who booed Mike Pence, just like some of those so-called Federalists who wouldn't even stand up for the Constitution today when Pence said that he defended the Constitution, the chairwoman of the party now, dishonestly saying, well, inaccurately, let me say, saying that insurrectionists were somehow peaceful protesters, or that, as you point out, the January 6th committee is targeting peaceful protesters. Of course they're not. I just find it, frankly, depressing that I'm living in a time when the Republican Party, in a rout, prefers Donald Trump to Liz Cheney, or even Mike Pence for that matter. But I think it is all about power. Scott may be right. It may hurt them in the election. It may not. I think that they seem to not care as much about elections as they do about power by any means necessary. And I think it's chilling.
Scott, do you think, what about, I didn't follow up with you on the Pence. Do you think Mike Pence has a shot at winning a Republican nomination for president?
I actually think he has a muted chance. I mean, I think he's going to run. I think he's going to be well thought of by a lot of people, but I think the odds of him getting the nomination aren't as high as someone like Ron DeSantis. I think ultimately, if Trump is to be beaten in a primary, it's going to be by someone who is going to be viewed as pure on a lot of issues, but also not having, publicly rebuked President Trump. And DeSantis is pure on a lot of the COVID issues, pure on the, sort of the whole Florida ethos and the conservatism that goes on down there. And he's been able to stay out of this fray. So I actually think Mike Pence's voice is vital. I think it will be part of the primary, but the ultimate beneficiary of it politically may be somebody who wasn't involved on January the 6th. And that could be somebody like DeSantis. So we'll see. I mean, there's a lot of runway between now and then. And if Trump doesn't run, maybe that changes the calculation. But my assumption is he's running. And if it's a pure heads-up debate between Trump and Pence, my assumption is Trump would win that debate. But if there are other people in the mix, potentially that would boomerang around to their benefit.
Yeah. Scott Jennings, I really appreciate it. Paul Begala as well. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Coming up next, more on the somewhat insane notion that a staunch conservative named Cheney